Noun foraging is how I start every single design project. So when you have a ton of complexity, a ton of chaos, you have a whole lot of research coming at you or not enough research coming at you, this is where to start. Noun forage what you've got. What's up, OOUXers? My name is Sophia Prater. I am the Chief Evangelist for Object-Oriented UX. I run the OOUX certification program, and I also run a little meetup I call OOUX Happy Hour. And this video actually is a live recording of a OOUX Happy Hour that we had where we had a noun foraging party. It was very workshop-y. So basically what's going to happen, I am going to splice in an intro into OOUX and noun foraging from a previous happy hour because this was a workshop-y happy hour, so we didn't want to go into a whole lot of lecturing. So it was with more experienced OOUXers, so there was no actual intro, but we did have a previous happy hour with Rick Williams on noun foraging where I gave an intro, and we'll link to that video. I think that was from last year, from 2022, where he talked about automated noun foraging. This was before ChatGPT came out, so that has even upgraded even more, but that's also a really good watch too. There is cool stuff you can do with ChatGPT with noun foraging. I will also link to a more recent podcast episode where I go through even more tips and tricks on how I do noun foraging. So those are two extra resources that will be linked down below. But for this particular recording, what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be going into this live recording, and in this live recording, there's going to be a lot of breakout rooms. So the breakout rooms are not recorded. So what is going to be recorded is while everybody's in the breakout rooms, myself and Utma Singh and Imogen Levy, the other two organizers, we're going to be doing these design challenges. Did I mention that they're design challenges? There's 3 design challenges. We're going to be doing these design challenges amongst ourselves. And then we're going to come back and we bring the groups back together and we discuss. What I'm also going to do is I'm about to record a little bit of analysis. I'm going to go into screen sharing. I'm going to record a little, kind of like an aftermath, going through, looking at what the groups did in the mural board and just kind of talking through and saying like what I like about what this group did, the questions that they brought up. So make sure to stay to the end and check that out. Check out my kind of post-mortem analysis. So we're going to splice in an intro on OOUX and noun foraging, then we're going to go into the live event, and then I'm going to come back into here in the little circle, do some screen sharing. I'm also going to link that actual mural board, so a view version of that mural board, so you can check that out too, and you can look at it on your own. But if you are interested in noun foraging, check out those resources, and also check out more of Object-Oriented UX. So if you want to know what happens after noun foraging. So noun foraging is amazing. It can totally stand on its own. It is a great way to just start to get understanding in a complex domain to figure out what the hell you're actually designing. It's awesome for that. But it is also the first step in a freaking 15-step process. Yes, 15 steps, but it's very flexible, very scalable. Don't worry, okay? But if you want to learn more about those 15 steps, check out OOUX.com/training, and we've got lots of options for you there. We've got the self-paced OOUX masterclass, which will set you up for the next certification, which is starting in October of 2023. And we've also got our Udemy course. So if you're interested in just getting the fundamentals, then definitely check that out. But it will explain to you all the really important steps that happen after noun foraging. So enjoy, happy OOUXing, and I will see you again on the other side of the live event when I do a little bit of analysis. All right, we're going to be talking about what is OOUX, what is Orca, and what is this very first step that is so freaking important and that can actually stand alone, even if you're not practicing the rest of the Orca process. So Object-Oriented UX, simply a philosophy for designing digital systems that respects, acknowledges, recognizes the fact that people think in objects. And because people think in objects, we need consistent and recognizable objects to understand an environment or a product, whether that is digital or physical. So as someone that practices Object-Oriented UX, what we do is we deliberately align our software, our apps, the digital environments that we're building to the user's real world mental model of these very concrete and defined objects and their relationships so that these abstract digital worlds can be as naturally intuitive
hopefully, as the physical world we evolved in. So this is all about the fact that as digital designers, we are not beholden to the laws of physics. And because we're not beholden to the laws of physics, we can often create objects and things that are not very recognizable. So we need to introduce part of our process. Really, we have such a strong part of our process when it comes to the verbs. This is the missing part of the process that really focuses on the nouns, missing in quite a few processes. If you're not 100% convinced that people think in objects, I highly recommend this article that I wrote quite a while ago. It really goes into that psychology. I've got a few more pieces on Medium. We also have a collection now. If you go to resources, we've got collections. There's a collection all about the psychology behind object-oriented UX, where you can dive into this a little bit more and look into the research that I've done. But for right now, come with me, suspend your disbelief. Humans think in objects. Your users most likely are human, and most likely you are human as well. Your team is human. So the team needs to understand the objects so that we can properly translate that to the objects that our users are needing to understand. So we, the OOUXers, answer these questions, these 4 questions before we get into designing screens. We make sure we're really clear on this. What are the objects in the user's mental model? What are the objects' relationships to each other? How do they sit in context of each other? What are the affordances of these objects? What do objects call the user to be able to do? What are the calls to action associated with each of these objects? What can users do to the objects, right? And what are the attributes that make up these objects? What's the chemical structure of each of these objects? And this aligns to the very best acronym in the whole wide world, Orca. So the Orca process is a beast of a process, but it is scalable and it's adaptable too. So in its canonical form, it is 15 steps. All right. We go over 4 rounds of the Orca process. Again, in its canonical form. Round 1 is discovery. We're going through the O, the R, the C, the A at a very high level, really just figuring out what kind of questions we have. Second, we're going into requirements. We're going to a deep dive on the O, the R, the C's, and the A's. Then we go into prioritization. We have this nice picture of the landscape, and then we cinch down on what we're actually going to sketch and prototype and test in round 4. All right. So I want to be really clear. This is not a new UX process. It's a new piece of your existing process. It's a process within a larger process. Okay. So most likely at your organization and within your practice, you're doing some sort of research and design, hopefully. Okay. Maybe the research that diamond isn't as big as you would like it to be, but you probably have some sort of form of research, some sort of form of design, whether you're agile or waterfall or something else, or safe, whatnot. You probably have these components. Okay. Some sort of diverging in the research, converging to define the problem. This is, of course, Bill Buxton's. This is Bill Buxton, right? The double diamond. Now I'm questioning myself. Put it in the chat if I'm wrong about that. And then sort of some diverging, brainstorming solutions, and then coming into a refined solution. There's an obvious weak point in this process, right? What is happening between these? And this is where I think our industry is not necessarily winning with flying colors. Okay. And this is really where that Orca process comes in. Okay. I'm not telling you to do anything different on research and design. We're already doing that, but how we synthesize our research and turn it into structure that design can hang on, how we make sure that research, how we pull it together into a user-centered structure that also our developers can work from as well. So from design, I also think, and I'm kind of ad-libbing here, that design is not just going to be those wireframes and the flows that we need to come up with. It's also the technical design too. So how can we make sure the research comes into the technical design as well? And also the Orca process provides a really good gauntlet to let you know that you haven't done enough research and collaboratively help the entire team know, make it very, very clear that there are high risk questions that we are assuming we know the answer on. Basically, complexity doesn't have anywhere to hide. Assumptions has nowhere to hide in this process. It susses all of those questions, those unknowns out early on before you get into design so that you know you need to go back to research and you don't waste your time. Okay, so it provides this nice gauntlet to make sure that you're ready to go into the next step. So Orca supports everything you and your team already do, okay? The UX research, the content strategy, the design system work, the visual design, this is going to make everything else easier. It's not going to replace anything. All right, so kind of like at a high level of where this fits in the OOUX process, in the Orca process, we've got some artifacts, an object map, a CTA matrix, a few other fun diagrams that we cover in those first 3 rounds. Then when we get into the 4th round, when we get into sketching, we have this sort of OOUX style sketching of pulling all that information directly into cards, components that represent objects, detail pages or detail templates, listings. Okay, so how do we actually go through a list of all of these, and landing pages where we're sort of dashboards and home pages and that kind of thing, and we can kind of hang that all together into a clickable prototype. Not necessarily with all the interaction behind each of those calls to action. We want to make sure that that mental model feels really good first. Like, test, do we have the right things? And are these the things that users want to do to these things? Get that in front of users. Test that before you go into all of the intricacies of actual interaction design. IXD and user interface design is expensive and time consuming. We got edge cases. Now we're dealing with the end user. We're going back and forth now. So we really want to make sure, is event the right object, and does booking an event make sense on this site? Is that even what users are trying to do here? It's a really simple example, but how often do we create features and functionality that's not really important to the user, right? Or even integrate objects that the users don't care about. All right, so it's all about really confirming that first. So what are objects? Objects are those real world things that have value to the business and or the users. So they make up the user's mental model and or the business model. So think people, places, things, content types. Okay, so if we're thinking of an app for public parks, maybe our national forests, we might have park, city, trail, review, playground, back. Those are the real things. We're not talking components here. We're not talking about top nav. We're not talking about the gallery slider. We're not talking about the drop downs. Okay, that's going to be our packaging for this stuff. We want to figure out what that valuable stuff is before we figure out what all the packaging is for it. All right, so we've got objects. Interesting. We've got our object. This is another important concept to know to get into your head, is the difference between an object and an instance. So I often say that objects are like the cookie cutters, and the instances are those individual cookies that get churned out. Okay, so if we have park as the object, Acadia National Park, Badlands National Park, Grand Canyon National Park, those would be instances of the park object. Okay. So when we go into object discovery, each of these steps has multiple activities, okay? So there's lots of things that we do in object discovery. The very first thing is that noun foraging, okay? We could do the noun foraging, and then we're probably going to be talking a little bit today about consolidation, maybe some instances, because in the noun foraging, we might pull out some instances. But this is really, we're just going to be scratching the surface of the Orca process here, and I know you'll already find value from this. So noun foraging at its best is we're taking information, not at its best, at its most baseline, okay? We're probably going to learn how to best to do it today. Noun foraging at its most baseline is an analog process of going through, parsing through a lot of information. We like to put objects on blue if you haven't already seen. So putting it on blue sticky notes, getting your blue highlighter, your blue crayon, and circling. I love printing a bunch of stuff out. Maybe not the most efficient way to do it. In the certification course, here's Kayla's version of a noun foraging. So she's going through the brief, she's pulling it into objects, she's consolidating it down. You can also look at the existing system or competitors. Here's what Nat's done, also from cohort 6, pulling down for a redesign of Vivino, trying to figure out, okay, what are the actual objects in there? When we're figuring out, is it an object? This is a framework that we like to use, SIP. And you can do a champagne cheers every time you find an object, the OOUX drinking game. So we want to see, does it have structure? Does it have attributes? Does it have instances? Can I come up with some examples of the thing? And does it have purpose? Is it just a means to an end, or is it something that users are actually coming for and using and value? Okay, so that's the kind of questions that we ask when we're trying to define, is this noun that we found in Noun Foraging, is it actually going to be an object in our system? So there's lots of fertile ground for Noun Foraging: desk research, current state analysis, competitive analysis, interviews, either whether that's subject matter expert, stakeholder, customer service interviews, chat logs, your research from your notes from your ethnographic research is really great, and user and stakeholder interviews. And I think Rick is going to be talking about how to kind of clean this up, because we've got to make it into text-based. So something like current state analysis or a competitive analysis, we might need to take our notes from that and pull it into this automated Noun Foraging process. But if you only use one of these, talk to your users, even if you're visiting with them over Zoom, listen to those nouns that they use over and over and over again. Take that transcript. We're going to use Rick's methodology here and get the robots to do this for you. Get the robots to do the listening for you. So even if you are only doing this one little piece of this piece, there's so much value to this. If only it's for coming up with questions. This is a great place to start to check your understanding. Here's just, I'm not going to read all of these. I'll give you the slides later. Asking questions about those objects is a great way to check your understanding. You better make sure that you understand all those things. Your team should have a common understanding of on these things. And you should, as much as possible, be using the user's language. So that we don't end up using 2 words for the same thing or multiple words for different things. We want to make sure that we are consistent in our communication, even just internally, because we're designing complicated things. All right, so at the end of the day, Orca is really a tool for understanding. And this Noun Foraging that we're going to be focusing on today is a powerful start to gaining that clarity. So we are going to record this even though we're doing breakout rooms, because Utma and I and Imogen, for as long as she lasts, we're actually going to be doing this too. So while y'all are in your breakout rooms, we're going to be doing the design challenge right alongside of you. So we'll be recording that, and then we'll bring everybody back right in between each design challenge to discuss, answer questions, and kind of compare across and see how things are going. So let me share my screen, and I'll kind of walk you through what's going to happen. And the first breakout room that we're actually going to do is just going to be intros. All right. So I'm going to walk through what we're going to do at a really high level. We're going to pop you into your breakout room just for 5 or 6 minutes, just so you can just do quick introductions. Then we're going to come back. Maybe we won't come back. We'll just do a longer first breakout room so that you'll have time for intros. And then what we'll do is we'll say, okay, I'll broadcast y'all to stop your intros and go into the design challenge and to delete the first curtain. Okay, so you're going to delete those curtains one at a time. And when you, logistically, once you're in this board, hopefully this is pretty self-explanatory. Once you go into your breakout room, you'll be able to see what room you're in, and you'll just go to that section of the board. So we're all in the same board. We can all see each other's work, but you'll just focus in on the little section. Does that make sense? Where it's labeled room 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 10 rooms. Match your rooms. Let me know in the chat if that doesn't make sense. All right. So basically what we're doing here is we're going to step you through 3 design challenges that sort of tell a story about how something might work within your organization and how OOUX actually might unfold over the course of maybe, I don't know, we're going to light speed this. This might be like a year or something. But we are going to pretend that we're working at All Trails. If y'all know me, I like hiking and trails and the outdoors. So, I do like the All Trails app. So we're going to pretend like, does anybody here actually work at All Trails? If you're watching this recording and you work at All Trails, contact me, let me know. Okay, so that would be an awesome coincidence. So basically the first design challenge is going to mimic, and you can hit follow me if you want to kind of come with me. The first design challenge is screen level. Some of y'all might be really working at this level. This is where leadership asks us to just just UX these screens. These are some screens. They're not performing the way that we want them to perform. And as leadership does, just can you UX these screens that are connected to all other things, but we're just looking at these screens. So we're gonna add our UX fairy dust to a very small handful of screens. All right, that's the first one. And now, as you go through these design challenges, you're going to be tempted to start actually creating a solution. That's not what we're doing here. That's not what we're doing here today. All right, you're not creating a solution. You're doing your noun foraging. You're just getting to your objects. Hey, put that back. And then you're coming up with questions. The real way to quote unquote win this noun foraging party is the groups that come up with the most interesting, best questions to pop back up to our stakeholders, to show them that this is a little bit more complicated than what they think it is. All right. And to expand their thinking. That is the goal here. Through noun foraging, coming up with questions. And a lot of those questions are going to sound something like this. Are these two things the same thing? Are these two things different things? If these two things are different things, how are they related to each other? So I told you we'd kind of start getting into relationships. A lot of the questions are going to be around these relationships. All right. But remember, we're not trying to actually redesign this yet. So try not to go down that rabbit hole of redesigning. Ideas, questions, and trying to get to the objects. What are the main objects? Okay. So you're going to when you unfold the curtain, you're going to see a lot of screenshots. And I'm going to give you a little peek here. You're going to see screenshots and you're going to see yellow sticky notes. So you're going to be noun foraging from those screenshots, those yellow sticky notes. If you have all Trails downloaded, feel free to download it. I don't know if you're going to have time for that. So we're going to be so quick, but like if you do have another or a competitor Trails app and you have time, if you want to look in a little bit deeper, you are allowed to do that as well. But really just stick to, at least for a first pass, the screenshots and the yellow sticky notes that I have for you here. Of course, with noun foraging out in the real world, you're going to be having much more diverse set of inputs, but we're in a little hermetically sealed environment here. Okay, once we go into the second design challenge, basically we totally rocked it with our first design challenge. This is a few months later. We're going to go into the second design challenge. This is more at the feature level. All right, we've proven the value of OOUX on a small project. And we asked some really important questions. We worked way more deeply than we were asked without actually compromising a timeline, which is great. And a few astute folks in leadership took notice. So we've been asked to use OOUX to add a completely new feature. So this is where I'm going to introduce a new feature that I've totally made up. Again, I'm not working with all Trails, right? I'm just having fun here. So we're introducing a new feature and you're going to use OOUX to basically come up with what's the scope of this new feature and what kind of questions do we have about it. And then the final design challenge is going to be totally product level. We're going to think about how are we going to really rethink all Trails with this new acquisition. Okay, so a lot of y'all working in enterprise environments and working with a lot of complexity, work with mergers and acquisitions. So this is something we're like, okay, now we're going to bring this entire other product in. How do we integrate this product into our system without overcomplicating it? Cool. Questions before I put you into your breakout rooms? Okay, so I will share my screen. And I guess we should also watch for if anybody raises their hand. All right, I'm gonna let y'all think about what you see here.
Okay, let me go to the board.
Yeah,
It'll be a lot easier.
I'm gonna move this sticky note.
Yeah, maybe we should make this sticky note smaller and put a bunch of blue ones.
yeah, do what you want to do. I mean, you can't do it to all the other boards, but they do kind of pop down into here. I mean, there's like person,
Oh yeah,
contact,
tree,
tree,
friend.
friend. Yep, I got friend.
Um,
Oh, friend.
And definitely, yeah, tree.
Tree.
what was it? Trees, tree. Trail. I feel
Yep.
like Trails. I haven't seen Trail. Oh, apart from All Trails, I guess the brand.
And then hiking or biking a trail. So we have trail here. And we also have map, which that's going to probably throw some people as they'll consider map an object, which is probably just content on the trail.
There was trail in the quote. That's what I was looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Invite.
Yeah.
Oh, users need an account. So would user be an object?
I'm just down foraging at this point. I'm just trying to get it all out there. So
Let's get it all out there.
yeah, I'll broadcast that to everybody too.
Keep moving the Zoom window, not the neural network.
Where did map come from?
Map was on the quote that I read. Where was it? In the middle somewhere.
Oh, okay. I trust you.
Have access to the trail map. What about there's loads of things on the right, the screenshot with Sophia Prater. There's like followers, feed, photos.
Oh, that's user, Sophia Prater.
She's got followers, she's got stats even.
Stats
As an object.
Photos.
Activities, miles. I mean, I'm noun foraging, not necessarily object.
I mean, even link.
View.
Yeah, I was going to say that earlier. I didn't.
I would even say two maps, right? Mission. Like, is that just one mission? You know, are there other missions? Is it there's a mission to restore damage from wildfires? Are there other missions? There just are other missions. I know. Yeah, photo review.
Well, then wildfires and deforestation are two nouns.
So those might be instance of like issues.
Yeah. Or like, what's going on in the world now? Like, show me all the wildfires currently burning.
Depressing. We got follower and then following. That's pretty good.
Yep.
I'm gonna see what everybody else.
Noun forage. What else?
Tree.
We're not late to put in, are we? We're not.
No, because like at this point,
it's quite late, isn't it?
Yeah. No, not letting anybody else in. Sorry.
Ooh, campaign is one we haven't got. Reward.
Oh, yeah. They're reading in between the lines, which is good to see that.
Well, that's definitely Rick's group. It's so neat.
Room 3.
Is that Rick? Because
I don't
really want it to be.
I don't know.
Oh. Organized.
Follow list. Okay, so what questions do we have for our stakeholders? What questions would you have if you were doing this? I have one, which is, can we, like, technically, this is more like a technical question, but like, can we see who joined? From like, we have an invite, but like, when you click on your invites, it doesn't actually, like, somebody joined, but I sent this to like 4 people and I have no idea who this person is that joined.
There's a yellow sticky that says users don't know who they invited actually joins. They want to follow that person.
Yeah. But like, technically, can we do that? Right? Is that a technical, like, why are we not showing that? People, an invite to a person joined. Is this like a technical reason we are not doing this? Or privacy reason? Like, is it a lawyer saying that we can't do that? Or is this just like, we haven't thought of that, right? Like, how easy is that to do? My other, like, if I was really doing this, I would wonder, like, how much control do I have over the person, like the person profile page, you know, like the stats, right? So there's like the activities and the miles, like trees planted, it would be like an obvious place to put it right here. But do I have like, can I even touch that page? I mean, if I was just jumping into this too, like, I'm actually, as a user, I'm kind of confused with like followers and following. Like, I have no idea how these people got here, like, versus my friends signing up. Like, what's the difference between a friend and a follower or a following?
And then can you have permissions around who you let follow you? So like if you only want your first circle of friends, or maybe your second circle of friends, a friend of a friend, but you don't want beyond that.
Yeah, write it down. Auto follow, like suggesting, like, do we want to suggest following? Like if somebody joins, they should kind of, how do they show up to be like, hey, your friend joined. Are you already following each other? Like, does the system assume that if I invited you to all trails, like you probably want to follow each other?
Mm.
And then the whole, like, what control do people have over trees planted is something. Like, can I determine what mission, like, are there multiple missions? Like, is a tree an object or metadata, basically? Like, is a tree an object? Like, can I see, is it just a number, or do I see, like, can I have more control over where I want it? Like, where do I want it planted? For what purpose do I want it planted?
Do we say, like, what is the difference between friend and follower? Like, did we capture that as a question? Because
How does following work with tree? Yeah, we need that question too.
And also, it's a bit, so find your people. Are you finding people that you know? Or finding people that you want to follow? That's why I think that question, like, what? Also, I think
People
for me,
you may know, yeah.
I'm wondering about, like, what is the business goal here? Like,
that is a great question. That is such a great question.
The very first quote was, like, make this more visible. But is the point about sharing, or is the point about generating more planted trees? Like, what is the business goal that we're trying to support?
Yeah, that's a great question.
So I was confused about mission. Your trees support the one tree planted mission, but can mission and organization be the same thing? Because if like some nonprofit decides to participate, but they're not necessarily on a mission, I don't know.
So what's the question? You want to?
I guess, what is the definition of mission?
Are there many missions? Maybe. Yeah. Let me get that in, and I'll close the group, and then I think I'm going to start with just any questions about the process. Oh, we didn't do our top 3 objects. Crap. What are our top 3 objects? Person?
Well, user or person, yeah.
Yeah, person. I would
Tree.
say tree, if tree is an object. and
trail. I feel like that's the whole
trail.
point.
But does that connect in this particular?
Oh,
like, is it invite? Like, invite is
maybe invite. Yeah, we're talking about sharing and growing.
Would it be in? Yeah, I guess it would be invite. I was going to ask if it would be mission, because that's tied to the reason, but I think invite's right.
Do we have invite?
We did. Pretty sure we had it somewhere, but we need it.
Imogen, you said it, but I'll go put it.
I wasn't contributing so much to the board, just shouting.
Makes sense. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close the rooms. Let's see what other people put. Friend, tree, invitation, and user. Okay. Yeah, friend and user is like activity, hiking or biking, and trail. Interesting. Trail, friend, object, person, tree, invite. Yeah, everybody's kind of on the same page here. So what's interesting is, like, those that put trail in, it's like this becomes like a really big scope question. Like, how much is trail? Are we integrating trail to this? Which is kind of that second design challenge, but they don't know that yet. What do we not know yet? Secrets. Secrets, you heard the secrets. All right. Questions. Let's start with questions about the process. Did anybody have any? Actually, I can look at the board, can't I, to see if there's any questions about the process. Ooh, no question, no question. Easy peasy. So one thing, if y'all want to kind of like bop around to the other boards and see other people's top objects. Okay, I do have to see a question about the process from room 8. How much thought should we put into identifying nouns on the screens? Do we just identify everything quick fire? Room 8, yes, I do. I am doing SIP in my head a little bit when I'm doing this. I am being liberal though when I'm doing it. Like you'll see on our map, on our what do we call it? Our mini board, I guess, on the organizer's mini board. I put some things like I put user, I put account, I put friend. I know that those are all probably the same object, okay? But I'm putting them down there actually to illustrate how many words we kind of have for the same thing. Person, we got user, we've got account. All those are being used interchangeably. So we have 3 labels. So that's a good idea to like start clustering those together. But I'm getting all those labels, right? So that I can show that like we're using a lot of terms for the same thing here, which is sometimes a good story to tell. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? On kind of as you're doing that first pass of noun foraging, how much thought are you putting into it?
I think the more the better.
The more thought.
I mean, the more nouns you can generate out of it, the better, so that you can, just work from there.
And to like, sometimes it's so surprising. Like we pulled out, did anybody pull out mission as an object? Trying to see, did y'all see that? 5 results. Yes. So people did pull out mission. So I'm likely that's out of scope for mission being an object within what we're doing here within this our purview of control. Likely you're not going to be like assigning trees to separate missions, but it's worth having the conversation, even if it's a 30-second conversation, just like it's like trying to find your blind spots. Like maybe, oh my gosh, no, we have these 3 macro missions within one tree planted. And we would love it if people could assign their tree and say, I want my mission, my tree to go toward deforestation. And I want this other tree to go toward wildfires. And like, that starts a really cool conversation about how that would be really engaging and how it would actually help one tree planted and whatnot. So even if I'm pretty sure mission isn't an object and it's just kind of like this sort of cloudy thing of like, this is just the mission of one tree planted. It's not instantiated. It doesn't have that I of SIP. I'm still going to put it down as a blue sticky note just to have the conversation.
I think getting a lot of nouns as well, because they could lead you towards types or roles later on too. So identifying them now, you won't forget them later. So. Right.
One of those that, and instances too, like deforestation and wildfires, probably an instance, like what we put over on our board is we put issue. But we were looking at, even though it never said issue anywhere, we were looking at the instances. You can actually pull instances as well. So instances and while you're doing this, the secret is you could be actually not just noun foraging, you could be verb foraging, you could be attribute foraging. But we're just doing noun foraging right now. Another question I see here is, should the nouns be specific to this flow or to the app overall? Likely specific to the flow, but kind of what I was saying about mission, like, is mission going to be in the flow? Is it not going to be in the flow? So for those that had trail, that's a really good question about scope. Like, are we attaching, is it like I hiked this trail with a friend and like, do trails and trees connect somewhere? Like just because trail was mentioned, I might do it in my initial noun foraging, but then as we consolidate, then we say, like, we actually have those questions to our stakeholders of, what, how do trails actually integrate with this? Do trails connect? Is there an opportunity to connect to trails? Cool. Before we move on to the next design challenge, we're going rapid fire here. Does anybody have any like really interesting stakeholder questions that came up? Just go off mute and let us know. or put it in the chat.
Our group was curious to know from the stakeholders, like, what is the priority? Is it showing the user how many trees have been planted, or is it getting them into the social aspect of the app? Because they're kind of conflated right now.
Right. What is the business goal? That Imogen nailed that question in our group. We also, yeah, definitely. We had some other ones of like, how does following work with trees planted? I thought that was interesting. Like, if somebody accepts my invite, do we auto follow each other? Like, does it assume, or does it surface in the app? It's like, hey, this person has accepted your invite. Do you want to follow this person? So like, how does inviting connect to following? We also had a question of like, why are we not connecting people right now to the invites? Like, why do I go into invites and I actually don't see, I see that one person, I got a tree planted, but I have no idea who did it. Like, is that a technical issue? Is that a privacy issue? So you can start asking technical questions too, might come up through this process. Okay. I'm going to put y'all back in your breakout rooms, go into design challenge 2. We're going to take like 12 minutes for design challenge 2. So, and if you have any questions, you want one of us to come into your breakout room, if you have a show-stopping question, then you can actually like raise your hand within the breakout room and one of us will come in and join you in your breakout room. All right. Good luck on design challenge 2.
Imogen, you're hanging and I'm so happy.
I'm still here.
It's so fun, right? Oh man. Okay. What do y'all think?
Okay. Check together. Trip.
Here, y'all shout them out and I'll scribe.
Okay. Trip.
Yeah, got it.
Well, there's trek and trip. I sort of feel like they're 2 different things. Maybe. But the way it's written implies that there's 2 different things.
So we have invite entries again. This is like a new project, so we're noun foraging all the nouns again. Okay.
Yeah.
And trees.
Definitely trail.
Route, which might be a synonym of trail.
Ooh. You're actually looking at the user generated content.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Or that's not user generated. That's just a description.
Oh.
Park. There's gonna be more in here. I called it a hike.
Yeah. Like activity.
Do you think so? On this one yellow note, it says we want to surface data for hikes on how many trees were planted from invites happening on that trail. From that, I kind of want to consolidate that sentence into a noun of trail markers, and like that would be a type of trail marker.
Ooh. Trail marker for what?
For trees that were planted on that trail.
I think it's more like we wouldn't have trees actually planted on that trail, like knowing where they are. It's more that the tree is planted from the sharing that happened.
Okay, sorry.
You know, like it was like, oh, we were on this trail. Like I invited the 2 of you on this trail and you joined all trails to go on this hike. So it was like the Cassidy Arch Trail, the 3 of us went on it. And because we went on it together and we like, even if we completed the trail or something like that, like more trees got planted.
Okay.
So it's like because of the hike.
Got it.
I don't know though, right? Like I just created a bunch of crap that a stakeholder might say.
Okay.
But that's actually, let's put it as a question. Like, you know, if we're just taking this at face value,
if it's the way you said, then trail marker would just be metadata on trail. But if trees are actually being, I mean, it would still be metadata probably, but hike review.
Depends on the mechanism by which we plant a tree, right? Like,
Mm.
who is actually doing the planting and how do they know where to plant the trees?
Yeah, I think that it's more like the trees could get planted anywhere, right?
Yeah.
But these are good questions, right? That's like, oh, this is actually like, oh, we're just going to show some data about the trees that were planted on that trail. Like,
Yeah.
what does that actually mean?
No,
But
that makes sense because the missions are going to be different. So like we read about the mission about deforestation. Maybe there would be a mission about like adding trees to an urban neighborhood to create more shade.
yeah, or there could be a tree planting effort that's in Capitol Reef National Park, you know, like how does that actually work?
Okay.
Like, I would say, like, how do trees earned from a hike / trail / trip connect to where trees are actually planted?
Yeah.
Activity is a word, probably synonym for hike.
Do y'all see what a mess this is though? Like this whole over here with like the feed, you have this object here that's like an activity object, and then you have a photo object that's part of that, that's literally like part of that activity. Then I have my review. It's like this weird shape-shifting mess. Like the review, like what's showing underneath the feed and what's shown underneath the reviews is actually the same object. It's just shown differently. It's just it's the same thing showing in review form versus activity form versus completed form, like a completed trail. It's all the same thing actually. So like I would have a question of, can we consolidate the review, activity, and completed trail object?
I had an object for points because the stakeholder is asking if we need a points system.
Yep.
But I suppose in the same vein, we need an incomplete trail object or some sort of incomplete.
Would that be a
state.
status?
I'm wondering if this is like the completed trail is the trip object.
Yeah.
Like, is there a trip object that kind of like evolves, and it could have a review as part of it? It could have multiple reviews because it's like, if we all went on this trip together, does it show all of our reviews together? So like, what is the trip object? Like, that is like,
Yeah. But also like I'm just thinking of like, if I've got a load of incomplete trails, that might also be a trigger for like, why don't you finish? And you can earn 1 million trees or whatever.
when you don't complete a trail, we cut a tree down.
Yeah.
No.
And also the photos, what are the photos? The photos your feed generally from any trip, or are they for a specific trip? Or
They're like, you can take a photo but not write a review. And then, but if you write a review and include a photo, like this photo, you can see this photo right here.
Yeah.
Is the same photo as this, which is the same photo that's this. But if I open this up, it's totally not connected. It doesn't like connect it to the, it's a mess. It really is a mess. It should probably all be a trip object that you could then write a review about the trip, and even like have multiple reviews. So there's like probably like and then you have pictures and like photo sharing even within the trip. So it's kind of all within this trip or trek or something. And then people can be added to that trek. It's kind of how I'm thinking about it. And it could just be you by yourself. The trek could be just, I don't have friends on this trek, right? So it's just my review and it's just my pictures, but then you can add people to it.
So is community, what is community? Is that, I don't know, what is that? Is that the friends that you've gone on the trip with?
Is that somewhere? Does it say community somewhere?
Yeah, it says community at the bottom on every screenshot.
Oh, yes.
I don't know. I don't know what's that.
I just,
Yeah,
what is community? And is community? Well, it could be it could be many different things. Is community the community that you've chosen? Is the community that you've tracked with? Is community just a link to?
let's see right now.
Something else.
Welcome to community. I didn't even see that. Oh, check it out. Latest from friends, local. So I see local things and I see latest from friends. Oh, I'm apparently following 53 people, but oh, and then I had to scroll. Yeah, and so it's just like it's like the feed of my friends.
So what's the difference between feed and community?
Like with
What's
under
feed?
profile feed is just me. It's just my feed.
What's the difference between your feed and, oh, like just stuff that you've posted?
Yeah, my feed is stuff that I've posted.
Oh,
And community is everybody's postings.
why would you want your posts to be so prominent in your app?
You mean like in your profile?
It's in your profile. Never mind. Okay. It's in your
I guess
profile.
it's like what I see as my profile is what other people see too. It's exactly the same, I
Gotcha.
think.
No, I'm with you. I was confused.
Well, it's confusing. It's confusing. Okay, so what are our top 5 objects? What do we think our top 5 objects would be?
What happened to invite on this one? Did we get that? We didn't get that.
We did.
Yes, it's at the beginning.
What are our top 5? Well, top 5. Still think tree. Because tree is,
I also still think trail. Is that what we had?
tree is the thing that we end up with. So I still feel like tree is helpful.
Well,
It's just like tree is like, is tree metadata? Like that's still,
No, I was literally thinking that when I said it out loud. It
yeah.
could be.
So I would say like the trek / trip. Like if that's the same thing or different things, it's like this like groupy thing is,
Yeah, yeah.
we definitely need person, user.
Yeah. It depends what the feature is, I suppose. Have we decided what the feature is? Because I feel like that would dictate the objects.
yeah.
It's this trek together. Can invite existing
together.
users to
Okay,
a
well
trip.
then invite needs to be there.
Mhm.
What needs to be there?
Invite.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But is invite just a verb, or is invite a status on a user? Like that friend has been invited.
Wait, friend. Is friend an object?
I think it's like, yeah, we got user invite.
Okay.
I'm like,
User friend. Okay.
maybe.
It's just an action on an object.
I think there's like things that you can do within that trek that can earn you points. So points, I feel like, is metadata.
On activity.
Yeah, on this thing.
On point. Okay.
And you might have a review because you can
But
get points from a review.
if tree is metadata, is tree metadata on an object for a user and or a trip or both?
What do you think? I don't know.
Is tree a junction between trip and user? Because if you think of many to many, it could be many to many in both ways.
How many trees were planted because of this user? How many trees were planted because of invites to this trek?
Because many users did the trek. Yeah.
Number of trees planted for the trek. And that could be based on like how many new users joined to join this trek, how many reviews were written, how many photos were uploaded, like, you know, doing all the activity basically. You could say, oh, we did this trek and like we've got 5 trees planted. does that then show up over on the person, right? Like if I organize that trek, do I get,
Yeah, you should get something.
yeah, planted for
What?
invites to app and activity within treks I organized? It's like a big question, like how are points calculated, right? Like we got to talk about that. And then I think that the actual trail, which is different than the trek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what y'all came up with. I don't see any questions about the process, but I'll pause for a moment while I'm looking at y'all's board and just see, were there did any more questions come up just about noun foraging in general that y'all want to talk about? All right, so some of the questions that we came up with for stakeholders, you know, kind of fundamental ones, like how is the point system going to work? How, like, the scope around this trip/trek object and how that plays with these existing objects, right? So we have a trail completed thing. We have a trail with a completed status. We've got an activity/review object. And hopefully y'all noticed the ridiculous amount of shape-shifting that is going on here between a photo, which is part of a review, like the photo, the review, and the activity, that's all the same thing. It's just depending on which tab you're on, it shows it in a different way. So it's a total mess. It's really all the same object, but that's something that I would really want to dig into, is like, can we consolidate all those things? And do we just have a trek object that maybe you don't have friends that go with you, you have just like, it's just you, or you can add friends to this trek object that can hold the photo sharing. Another question was how to reviews, like now does a review, because you might have multiple people that are part of a trek/trip. Also, what do we want to call this thing? Do we want to call it a trip? Do we want to call it an event even? Like, what do we call this thing that you're inviting people to and you kind of go together? And then you have multiple reviews. Like, do you see everybody's review? So we're getting into relationships here, where is there a trip has many reviews, it has many people that are in that trip, could have just one, just you. But does it have people that are in that trip and also the reviews that they've written? Is it kind of like all contained within it? So those were some of the big questions that we had. Did y'all have anything else come up that was super interesting as far as like, wait, what are we actually building here?
Yeah, we had a question regarding like, is it going to be location based? Like when you're on that trip, is it the people around you that you're with that you're going to add to your trip? And then we're talking about permissions and only allowing your visibility of your location to those that are your friends.
Oh my gosh, like this is the thing where it's like totally different. Like you could have totally different thought bubbles and you could just start designing screens with these totally different thought bubbles. Like that had not even occurred to me as that could have been a thing. But that's like, you know, when you get a brief from some stakeholders, like how many times does this happen where you realize like way down the trail, if you will, that you've been thinking of these things differently. Like I was thinking you're inviting your friends, but what if it's like, hey, these are just other people on the trail with me at this particular time, and we somehow get lumped together into a trek? You know, does it happen automatically based on location? We also have like another like scope question of or not even a scope, but also like wait a second, what does this actually mean for trees to be planted along is it trees that are actually planted along a trail, or is it like, because you went on this trek and you got a bunch of points, here's how many trees were planted? They very well could have been planted in the Amazon rainforest. Like you don't even know where they're planted. And this also leads to like, what is a tree? Did anybody have a discussion on is a tree actually an object or is it just metadata?
Yeah, our group was talking about whether it should be an object or whether it's something that attaches to the invitation and the trail.
Yeah. And like, how does this point system work? Like, let's say trees are just metadata because all it is a number, right? And you have a trek where you have a trek that might generate a bunch of points. from people that were there, reviews that were written, different, like you would, let's say I invited Imogen and I invited Kate and I invited Fiorella, and we're all going. So I invited 3 people, they're new users, right? So that's 3 trees, 6 trees planted because y'all get one and then I get one. And then we all write reviews. So then 9 trees are planted because of the trek that we went on. And because we completed it, we get another tree. Like, how does this point system work? And then how does the roll up work? Like, does it show because I organized the trek? I was the organizer on the trek. Does it show on my profile? Do those 9 trees, do I get credit for it? Or does it just show within the trek? So these are really important questions to figure out before you actually start designing screens. And this process can help. Cool. All right, y'all.
Sorry, I think
Yeah.
Sophia, on that,
Hey, Pauline.
our group was debating on, this is a new idea, so we're wondering how much of this is marketing push versus a actual pilot project that will live on, and so how deep should it go?
Yeah, what is again, coming back to the business, these are all good questions to be asking, what is the business case for this? What is the longevity of this? Do we have these other objects? that kind of comes back to we've got this review object. How does the review object hook in with this trek object? And then invites too, if invite becomes an object, and is invite actually metadata? Is actually invite a status on a person, or does an invite that has been fulfilled, right, just becomes a person? How do those things work together? But yeah, there's the activity object, does it become the trek object? That I think is a really big question. Do we just upgrade our activity object so you can add people to it, and then reviews kind of sit underneath the activity? Yeah. It does sound like a pyramid scheme. Yeah, exactly. Okay, we don't have much time. Let's do one more. We're gonna even go faster. We're just gonna take 10 minutes on this last one. I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna take 8 minutes on this last one. The biggest one, just to give y'all a taste, and then we'll come back and we'll chat a little bit more before we wrap it up. I'm gonna open up the rooms. All right, product level, y'all. We just bought 1 tree planted. Region.
Well, I mean, yeah, location.
Region, sub-region. These are funny because you have a sub-region, but then you also have is this a mission? 100 plant trees for Africa? Or is that a region?
Or is that a mission
Project?
campaign?
Donation. Can you just make a donation?
Basket. Or checkout, or whatever it is that we've got there.
These tree species. I'm just going to move this question. I think I wanted to delete that. I forgot to delete that.
Planting site.
Ooh, good one. And then this biodiversity, that seems like it's an event, World Chimpanzee Day. And this is a theme or something. Biodiversity. Fundraiser. This to me, this is where tree becomes an object and not just metadata. Because if you start saying where you want the tree to be planted, then it's got structure, right? It's now a tree is connected to a trek potentially, and then also a region. Tree, and do you get to depending on the region, if you do a little spinner and it randomly says which species it is, and it shows a little picture of an oak tree versus a yellow poplar.
I guess also related to theme in that sense that certain trees are good for biodiversity in certain areas.
Yeah. Is that metadata? Or is that a
well, if theme is an object
captured
earlier, theme of biodiversity.
I think my question, my big question would be, how much do we want? How much are people playing with their trees? This is almost a question for UX research. like how much do we invest in, like, do they place them, you know, like what is this level of interactivity? Much we invest here.
What about
So
donation for people with accounts? Can you donate anonymously?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
It looks like you can you in the app. Can I donate for a trek? Like how to like treks and fundraisers? Like can a trek be a fundraiser?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, can the trek be a fundraising mechanism for those regions or whatever it is that whatever those things, campaigns, I guess makes more sense.
Yeah, like could it be like a series, like when you have a fundraiser and you're like, okay, here's all the treks that we're gonna do, and somebody like, and somehow donations, like maybe people that aren't going on the trek, they're like, yeah, if you do all these things, if you complete all of these treks, I'll donate $10 and you can like share it on Facebook or something and get your friends to. That'd be really cool. I'd do that. That's a tree species. Like region seems like fancy metadata on a subregion. It's like a thing that you can like where it shows the $1. Like this is something that I can like actually place the tree in this bucket. I would say like, I would say project, and that could be a region, a theme. There could be like types of projects or an event like World Chimpanzee Day.
Yeah, I think project makes sense.
Yeah, project or campaign. And then there would be a bunch of metadata on that would explain what it was about.
The trek/trip object and the fundraiser might be really interesting. Like how do all these connect? Like this is what I would probably want to workshop is these, maybe user too, maybe not tree species. So maybe I'll talk about that at the end. Just like, there's like which objects need to be in the system and which objects you need to workshop. This is something I've been talking a lot with cohort 8 about when it comes to prioritization. Like sometimes you're prioritizing from a like, this is what we need to talk about perspective. Like here's the, like you might be doing this with your relationship workshop. It's like you're gonna need to pick and choose. There's gonna be some objects that you know need to be in the system. It's just, they're not gonna generate the level of conversation. Like tree species, like it's like, okay, we can figure that out later, but figuring out how these work together would be really interesting. This is what I would want to do a nom with for this project. Okay, I'm going to pull everybody out.
Run out of time. It's gone so quick, hasn't it?
I know.
It's a party.
It's a party.
Like do something that like completely non-work related, but it's still work related.
Right.
So fun.
But I've stayed awake for the whole thing.
Yay.
That's a real testament. It's a real testament to how much of a party it was that Imogen stayed the whole time.
I won't be able to sleep now. I'm going to be wired.
Yeah, you're going to be like redesigning how to integrate one tree planted into all trails and dreaming about it. So we still got people coming out of the breakout rooms. We'll probably go for like another 5 minutes. If you are on the West Coast and you're in the middle of your workday, then you have another meeting, then you're about to be late for that. So feel free to pop off, but hopefully y'all enjoyed that. There was one thing that I wanted to bring up here, and I can definitely take some more questions. We can have more discussion. I'll hang out for a few more minutes for sure, but lots of scope creep. Awesome. So one thing that I've been talking a lot with cohort 8 about that I didn't really talk about much in previous cohorts, but when it comes to like prioritization and being like, okay, like with this last one, there's all these objects that probably will need to get integrated. It's one thing, how do we phase those objects into an integration? Like we're going to bring, like, are we bringing there's a lot of prioritization questions, like what's more important to bring in, like the fundraiser object or like region object? Like how much, like one of the questions we had for stakeholders is like, and UX research is how much do people want to like play with their trees? Like, do people care? Like, they just want to get the trees and get the points, or they're like, no, I want to spin the globe and place my tree in a region, like how much interactivity is there? How much are we investing in that kind of UI design? And how much do people actually want that? Or people just want to see the points and they just want to see the trees planted? So that's like a question for UX research. But then there's also this question of there's prioritizing as far as phasing, but then there's always also prioritizing what you want to workshop if you have time for a workshop. So if I had a four hours to workshop with a nested object matrix going into the next step, for this one, I probably would want to workshop the tree, the user, a project, which would probably be around like a region, a theme, or an event. So I probably would have types of projects, a trek, and a fundraiser, depending on prioritizations. But like what we were discussing is, there's this idea of maybe I create a fundraiser and I have multiple treks inside of it. How do donations work with that? Like that would be a really interesting nested object matrix, would be like those 5 or 6 objects. So maybe even like if tree species, we had that conversation, somebody's like, oh yeah, that's an object. That to me doesn't become like, that can be figured out later. So there's those levels of prioritization of like, yes, it's going to go on the app, but it's not that complicated. So I don't necessarily need to like, if I have a limited time for a workshop, is it going to get into the workshop or not? So questions, comments, ideas?
I have a question on the trees, because you were talking about the trees. When we started about this, it was give a tree, but then by the third case study, we were looking at, there was a digital tree, but then there were tree species where it was like super science. So we were wondering, how do you talk about the tree? Like, this is an acquisition. In the first part, a tree was, let's just go simply, it's like a physical tree, like one tree, if we can just imagine that. And now we're talking about digital trees, and then now it's tree species. Like, how do you handle that?
Yeah, so in one tree planted, tree species is core content. It's just locked up in a description of the region, right? So it's just core content in there. But now we have this idea of a digital tree that we've been working on, right? And right now, it might have been the first 2 project trees might have just been metadata, right? It might not have actually been like a little picture of a tree that I connected to this person or this particular trek. But now if I have tree species, it comes back to that, like, how much do we want to actually go forward with this, where we're playing, we're letting people to say, I want to not only plant it in the Appalachian Mountains, I want to plant an oak tree. Or, and how much can we fudge it too? Where like, we don't really, can't really track that we're going to actually plant an oak tree because you said it's an oak tree. But in my little digital forest that I create, because I now have a digital forest, do I get to decide that I want to plant oak trees, or I want to plant cassava trees or something like that, based on the region? So how much decision-making does the user get? And what is this digital tree? Like, is it still just metadata, or is a tree an object within the system? Like, these are all like really good questions to talk through with the entire team and with UX research, and pop back to UX research. I think that that's like if we didn't have the research on that, on how much interactivity people would actually want and people would actually play with, like, I would not want to really go forward with this project until I really understand how much are we actually, like, there's the functionality, and then there's that, like, how much is this like a little Tamagotchi of your little forest that you're creating, and you can share your forest, and need more research, right? And so this is a tool. It's a really good tool to come up with those questions, ask, what are these things? How are these, like, is this one thing or these different things? How are these things connected? Sometimes those are questions for your stakeholders. Sometimes those are questions for your developers. Sometimes those are questions for UX research, and to bring it back. And so this is a really great way to, before you get into screens, before you go further, to figure out, do some initial prioritization, do some initial scoping. Okay, no, fundraisers are not in yet. You don't even need to worry about that. Okay, we can put fundraisers aside. So initial scoping, and then figuring out what you want to take into the next steps of the Orca process. What do you want to do? If you got 4 hours or 2 hours with your stakeholders, then you probably have time for a 5x5 nested object matrix. Which 5 objects are you going to run through that ringer? This is a great way to figure that out. Cool. Hope y'all had fun. I will give you a moment for those. I should have put this in the chat before, but if you want to make sure you connect with people, I'll keep this open just for another minute. Put your LinkedIn in the chat so y'all can connect with each other. If you haven't done that already, connect with your group. We should have done that when y'all were in breakout rooms, but we didn't do that. But if you want to, yes, and y'all click on those LinkedIns, connect with each other. Oh, and also forum.OOUX.com. If you do not already have an account on the forum, most of these people are already in the forum. So if you're not there already, go ahead, make your free account in the forum. We got the first 2 modules, the Udemy course completely for free there, all sorts of other goodies. So make sure to join the forum, and happy OOUXing. We'll see y'all next time. We'll see you on the forum.
Okay, I'm back. I hope you enjoyed the recording. And then I totally forgot to mention, but also make sure to join, if you haven't already, join OOUX Happy Hour over on Meetup. Go to meetup.com/object-oriented-UX and join the meetup there. So I think we're going to do this again. We got really great feedback on this Noun Foraging party. So we'll probably do it every year. So make sure you know about when the next one is if you want to join and participate. And just know when the next happy hour is. We have fun. Okay, let's do some analysis. I'm not going to go over all these boards. I'm just going to kind of randomize it, but I'll go through it design challenge by design challenge and just talk through some stuff. Just talk through kind of what I'm seeing on the other boards and what I like, what I don't like. So one of the questions that I got during the happy hour was about how liberal are you? Or are you just trying to get all the nouns? Now I am using SIP. So you might have heard us mention SIP, that's structure, instances, and purpose. We go through that in a lot more detail in the training, but it's basically a really nice way to analyze, could this potentially be an object? So I am doing a little bit of SIP in the beginning, but I'm also just kind of coming up with all the nouns. So we are very liberal here in coming up with our nouns. The nouns that we ended up with were person, tree, question mark, and invite. And I'm like looking back on this, I'm like, I really think that maybe the only object that you really need to worry about here is the person object, and that person object from the perspective of whether they're a friend or an invite that is like being fulfilled, right? Or if it's this user, right? So really the main object to analyze here is the person object from these multiple perspectives of the user and the friend, somebody coming in and somebody bringing somebody in. The tree is likely going to be metadata. Right now it's metadata, and that would be a question to ask, like how much do we want to blow this tree out into an actual object? So we talked through some of our business questions, but let's go over to room 1 here. They did friend, tree, invitation, user, and invitation is a really funny one. Like you go to see your invites and then you don't actually see any invites. You just see the number of trees that you planted. Like I don't actually see who I've invited. So that would be a good question to ask. Like, can we actually track that? We talked about that in the happy hour. I'm just reiterating that. Like that would be a big thing that I would talk about. Like, why are we not showing all of the invites? We actually don't show invites on what looks like a list, should be a list of invites. So what's up with that? What's going on? Is there a technical reason? Is there a privacy reason? And then friend and user, I would not have those as separate objects. Those are just two like perspectives of the same object. And tree, again, tree is really feeling like metadata. And then I really like these questions. Is there a difference between an invite and a link? Like for every invite, is it a specific link or just can I copy and paste that link? So how is the linking working? Is there an intentional difference between friend, follower, and following? And I'm sorry about the audio, my computer. How do people do this? Like every time I'm recording on the computer, my computer just starts whirring. It's just like a rocket wanting to launch right now. So if there's background noise, I'm very sorry. I'm just going to keep recording. I recorded a lot of my OOUX masterclass videos with frozen peas underneath my computer to keep my computer from overheating. Like, is this just what people do when they do screen recordings and their audio is perfect? I don't know. If you know, if you have any tips, please let me know. Okay, so is there an intentional difference between friend, following, and friend, follower, and following? That is huge. Like we're calling them a friend. And in many social networks, you either have friends or you have this follower following dynamic. And AllTrails is using both of those. So that's definitely something as we're going through this that I would encourage cleaning up here. What is the correlation between trees, activities, and miles? Yes. Do people even want to track trees? Where is this research coming from? So questioning assumptions is great. This group pulled in trail as an object. Trail is definitely something we would want to discuss. And we'll get into that more in the second design challenge, but trail doesn't necessarily feel like it's going to be an object within our purview of control, but it is something that I would bring up as a question. Again, like noun foraging is so great for scoping. Like, are we dealing with trails in this at all? How do trails hook into this? If the answer is no, great. The answer is no, but we don't have any gotchas later. What information can we share about the tree that is planted? Great question. Like, that's getting to the S of SIP, the structure. What kind of structural information do we have about a tree? Do we know where the tree was planted? What's going on with this? Or is it just going to be metadata? I put my star over and I can't read it. Is planting trees always going to be the reward for inviting friends? Great question. What is the longevity of this? Do we have a reward of type tree and then potentially other rewards might come in there? Could you give $1 to save the bees or something like that, right? Are there going to be other initiatives that are coming down? That's like one of my favorite questions. Whoever asked this question, gold star or red star. Such a good question. This gets into also the cardinality, right? And what is metadata and what is an object? So all this figuring out, y'all, this is the design before the design. This is so important. You don't want to be figuring this stuff out while you're wireframing, okay? You want to be figuring this stuff in discussions with your stakeholders, with your team, with your developers too. With your content people, with everybody. Where does the tree get planted? How is it tracked? That goes back to what information do we actually know about the tree? Okay, going down to room 3, what did they come up with? Trail, friend, and tree. From this, a lot of these I don't see as objects, like a feed, I wouldn't call that an object. Stats would be more metadata. Follower is just that perspective or that status of a friend. Photo is an interesting one, which we'll get to in the next challenge. And review is an interesting one too. But I really think that this design challenge, the main focus is going to be that user object. And that user object, we're going to get like really complex with that one object because we're going to be looking at it from various perspectives. And potentially, is tree an object? Is invite an object? All right, some other cool questions that I really liked here. Is there a notification or a messaging system? Do we get notified? Is notification an object? Does inviting a friend automatically follow each other? So what actually happens? How does this following and followers, so if we noun forage those nouns as following and followers, we can ask, okay, those are actually just states of people based on their relationships. All right, so we would actually probably get to that in when we get into our nested object matrix. We would really get into that more. But what happens? Does an invite turn immediately into a following follower relationship? I really don't know how this works, and I'm very suspicious here because I have exactly 53 followers and exactly 53 following, and I was not intentional about that at all. So I'm kind of thinking, are these just my friends? Do we mutually follow each other? How is this working? Who designed this? Okay. I think I had one other thing. Some other ones. Person, tree, invite. Yep. What do people see in an invite? What do people see in an invite? Ooh, what do people see on the other side? And what do you track about the tree for a member? Okay, so very similar questions here. So in this first design challenge, the objects we didn't have a whole lot of discrepancy. You'll see in the next design challenge, I'm going to actually stop this and let my computer cool down so we don't have this terrible background noise. In the next design challenge, you'll see how the objects start diverging, okay, and what to do about that. So I'll be back in a second. Okay, computer has calmed itself down. I've had a smoothie. Let's go into design challenge 2. So here's where we add this track together feature. And I love this idea. But there's so much complexity here. There's so much hidden complexity here that this noun foraging process just brings straight to the surface. So this is where we get this interesting thing where the different rooms, actually, let's go back to room 1. Woo! Wee! Where the different rooms start having, is this ours? That's the organizers, start having different objects. So the organizers, we prioritize this like trek/trip object. What are we going to call the thing? The user/friend/invite, which is probably all the same thing too. And the review and the trail. And then we were thinking that trees is still going to probably be metadata here, and the trek is we're going to have points associated that potentially can be converted into trees or something. But one of those big questions is, how is this point system going to work? Number of how's the point system going to work? I'm going to go into that more. Big open question. So then you start seeing the top 5 objects on these other boards. We've got tree, activity, post, activity companion. Again, that's probably going to be the same thing as a person. Also the trip. And then going over here, we've got activity, user, trail, review, tree. They're very similar, trip, trail, invite, but they start diverging a little bit more. Diary entry got pulled in. Whether review is in or out, whether it's an activity or a trip. So we start getting to diverge. So this is why it's so interesting to do your noun foraging when you're doing this in a workshop, to split people into groups and have a group of nouns that you've already foraged. It's almost like stage 1 foraging that I'll often do in workshops where I do the foraging, and then I get, like, I'm very, very liberal. I have all the synonyms in there. I put them all on cards. There goes my computer again. It's not all days. It's just today. Today it's feeling everything else is shut down. Today it wants to make a lot of noise in the background. You can do that first pass at noun foraging on your own, and then bring those cards and do kind of like a noun foraging card sort where multiple groups have to pick their top 5 objects, and then you start seeing how they don't align. And this is a great way to just start discussing and be like, oh, you have that object, but I have that object. Why do you think that that's important versus this object? So interesting, fun stuff. Let's just randomly take a look at some of the questions. Is there a social site where users can schedule a hike with a friend? Yeah, like, how does that scheduling work? What's the scope around that? What's the difference between an activity and a trip? That's huge. Like, I don't know if y'all caught this in the recording, but like one of the biggest things I'm seeing here is this massive amounts of shape shifting here. This is all the same thing, whether it's an activity, a review, a photo is just part of this thing. It's being surfaced as a photo. It's like a scope question of, can we clean all of this up and just make a trip object? And then we can have reviews inside of the trips. Anything else interesting over here? All right, I won't go any more into that. I don't want to make this video too long. It's already so long. So congratulations if you made it to the end here. I totally forgot to go over this. I made a little object map over here. Yes, going back to this like person object and the invite object and the friend object. So a person has many users. This person has invited. A person this is where it like gets in, what I was saying, and gets into the nested object matrix. A person also has many users who are friends, ? Or who they follow or who follow them. So there's all these different ways that a person can relate to another person. And I would model that as a bunch of nested objects. And then a person has date joined. So is that metadata on this invite object? Like, let's just try to model the invite. Like sometimes I just got, I try to think about it and I'm like, model it, right? So we've got an invite technically, or theoretically, has one person who sent it. That's a user. Well, I would say one user who sent it. I wonder if it's Mural. Does Mural just like take a lot of juice or something so that it makes my computer work? Sorry again about the background noise. One person who gets it who like might become a user. And the weird thing is like probably the system doesn't know who that person is until they follow the link and they know that it's your link. And I think from a technical perspective, we can match that up and be like, oh, this user came from this person's link. They're probably connected, right? So then we have some dates here. We have like date sent, which is on the invite, but date joined is actually on the person, right? So this person who gets it, who becomes a user, right? This person who gets it, who becomes one of these guys, has a date joined. And then the invite, does the invite itself have the trees associated with it? Right? Like, but it's always 2 trees. So there's some complexity there that I would definitely need to think more about, and OOUX is going to help me do that, to figure out how, like, to actually figure out this point system, which might be really fuzzy in our stakeholders' mind. Like, they have some ideas about it. To actually model that point system, I am so glad that, like, if I ever had to do that, then I just feel fully confident that I can do that with OOUX and be able to work my stakeholders through the modeling of that so that it's really clear about where do these points come from if we do need to get to that point system. So, and then also that great question that somebody had about rewards has many rewards. It has many rewards. It's rewards the object, and tree is just a type, of many other types, right? That I can maybe choose my reward in the future. So how do I want to go ahead and model it like this is a reward object, and right now the only type is trees, but later on we might introduce other types of rewards. So that's just a little bit of object mapping for you. Hope you enjoyed this, and happy OOUXing. Cheers.